Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now, guys? We are up to our elbows in transfer rumours and activity, kind of. And it wouldn't be a transfer window here on the channel if we didn't make a video looking at the positions that we do need to fill and finding out some ideal players around European world football that we could, should, and probably won't actually go out and try and bring into the club to enhance our best 11, as well as fix all the problems we've got in and around the squad. At any point in the video, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this as we get through an action-packed transfer window in summer pre-season for Celtic as we set up for a massive 24-25 season with the biggest Champions League ever, as well as another campaign that's all going to be about regaining and retaining domestic dominance, guys. And yeah, it's a fun one. We've got 15 players to look at today across the three main areas of the pitch that we still need a bit of TLC, a little bit of reinforcements in ahead of what is going to be a huge second campaign kind of for Rodgers. We call this a second campaign or what? And get into the comment section in this one and let me know if you could only sign one player for Celtic out of this video, who would it be and why? I'm really looking forward to catching up with the comment section on this one. But yeah, let's just get stuck into it. Now, this is where we left off with the squad depth on the last video. I know the Bernardo deal hasn't really moved on since the last couple of days, but I do expect that this is a deal that's going to be done. And otherwise, this is how the squad is sitting. Last time I was on the channel talking to you about Celtic transfers and whatnot, it did feel like the Adamida thing had got a little bit of traction, got a little bit of forward momentum, but that seems to have been cooled over the last day or two from the quotes and the comments that we got from the Norwich manager. So it is back to square one when it comes to attacking prospects. But we've definitely done all our business that we're going to be doing in the goalkeeper department, which was the biggest gap that needed filled this summer. So getting that done swiftly, promptly, and not just with one goalkeeper, but with two, I think it's a big pass mark for how we're going through the transfer window and the goalkeeper. And then we move up the pitch into defence, because defence is the area of the pitch where a lot of Celtic fans do have a bit of a split opinion when it comes to Liam Scales and really what do we need to add into the centre-back position, because we all expect Yuki Kobayashi is going to go. It feels like Lagerbielke is always on the verge of leaving, and then the Rocky gets injured or Welsh gets injured. So I'm not too sure, but I don't think his career or his long-term future is going to be at Celtic. But I do think we keep Welsh. Let's see what happens with Murray. Maybe gets a wee loan since he's just back from injury. And really, it's just we're really looking at the Rocky as being the backup centre-back, or the challenger to Scales, as it were. And it does feel like, you know, Naroki and Scales, when they're at their best and, you know, what they actually bring, I think both of them are pretty good. I think both of them are just about probably good enough for us to take into the Champions League this year if they are fully fit and firing, as long as the rest of the defence and the rest of the team is as such. But as you've seen with Celtic over there forever, if something can go wrong, it probably will. So I don't think the club would win any fans or any support if they didn't go into the market again for another centre-back. Now, I do think we're going to need to move out some of the fodder that we have in the squad on loan, options to buy, permanent sales, whatever it is we can get done to free up a little bit of the capital, to free up a bit of the squad space as well, to actually get meaningful training with the guys that, you know, maybe look to come into the team. But on top of the left centre-back thing in defence as well, we've also got left back, because although Greg Taylor is firmly at the moment the #1 left back for Celtic, we've seen it in Europe enough times, not really domestically. I think domestically, like, we don't need a left back. Greg Taylor is perfectly fine to play Scottish League Cup, Scottish Cup, the Premiership, you know, Premier League, whatever we're calling it, SPFL. You know, Taylor can do all this stuff. Where he does leave a bit wanting for is Champions League. 1v1 defending isn't his strong suit at that tippy top elite table. Now, Champions League might be a little bit easier for us this year, because we will be playing two teams in the same pot as us, which normally doesn't happen. You're normally just, you know, in pot 4, and then we get really big teams out of pot 1, 2, and 3, and we're kind of screwed. But we're going to play 2 pot 1s, 2 pot 2s, pot 3s, pot 4s. So we get 8 games, home and away, not the same opponent twice. So it's going to be a really action-packed Champions League. And I think bringing Taylor as the first choice left back into that is probably a bigger question mark, and a bigger, because again, together, like on this side of the pitch, where these guys are maybe just about good enough, and then if Taylor isn't good enough, it just feels like, you know, there's a lot of pressure on that side of the pitch. Teams will try and force down that way. For how good Vickers and Alistair Johnson are, no real team that we're going to set up against in Europe is going to think, all right, we'll get a lot of joy out that side. They're going to try and target the left-hand side. So for me, I don't think there's much of a question to be had here. A left back has to be better than Greg Taylor, has to be clearly at least have the potential to become a bona fide Champions League level player for us. So when I'm looking around European and world football and thinking about someone that would definitely be good enough to put Greg Taylor out of the team and would definitely be good enough for us to take into the Champions League, there's not that many players that really do jump out at you as like fitting that bill that we could reasonably acquire on loan to buy or whatever it might be. But there is one name, and he might be familiar to you guys because we actually played him in the Champions League last season, and that is Javier Galán. Now, it must be said, from watching Atletico Madrid in the Champions League last year, I don't think Javier Galán was actually really Champions League level for Atletico Madrid. He also went on loan to Real Sociedad, and he actually played a knockout game in the Champions League for Real Sociedad against Paris Saint-Germain. And again, PSG, you know, their wingers are frightening to anyone. He didn't really cover himself in too much glory in that game either. I wouldn't necessarily say in his Champions League appearances last year he was bad or whatever, but it definitely wasn't a team that excelled or really did help Atletico or Real Sociedad. So it is kind of hard to think that he would definitely offer us that. But this is a guy that before joining Atletico Madrid, for me, was the best left back in La Liga, was getting called into the Spain team, was getting senior Spain caps. And now Real Sociedad don't need him back. They've, you know, signed Sergio Gomez from Man City. Atletico Madrid don't really have a spot for him. And at 29 years of age, Atletico Madrid aren't going to be asking for a huge transfer fee. His wages probably won't be anything mad. And because of the career he's had, this is a guy in search of glory and medals, which we could certainly offer him. And when it comes to domestic football, this is a bombastic left back. This is a guy that will attack like mad in the Scottish League. And I think he would be a really good asset. The problem is he's 29, and I just don't see the club bringing in a 29-year-old at this stage for left back. Now, there might be a few candidates that used to play in the Premier League and maybe in the Championship or in Turkey or whatever, but again, a lot of those targets, they don't really float my boat. I don't know about yours. And if we are going to go for younger players who are youth internationals as well and do have some sort of track record of domestic success, there's a few other players around European football that I would find a bit more fitting of the Celtic way, as it were. And one of the top candidates for me, again, we've featured him on the channel before, but his name is Alexander Prass, the Sturmgrats. I would say utility man. He plays a little bit of left back for them, but being such a dominant team in a weaker league necessarily, a more football-based league, but the Austrian league, as you know, it's definitely in the same realms as the Scottish league. Let's just put it like that to keep it kind. So he's been playing a little bit of left mid. He can actually play a little bit of centre defensive mid. And again, he's been getting senior Austria caps under Ralf Rangnick as well, went to the Euros. And this is a guy at 23 years of age. He's only got 2 years left on his contract. That I don't think this would be a massive transfer fee. We'd look at probably a similar deal to what we did for Nicholas Kuhn. And again, it's probably a very similar type of outcome as what we're looking at here. A guy that will come, be of the level and contribute well. And then it's just a matter of how good actually are you. Now, because he has a bit of a defensive mid and can play left back and left mid, physically, he's a bit more capable of being in the duels, and maybe he could do a bit better than Greg Taylor in those 1v1 situations out in the wide area. But again, equally domestically, he's a artillery player. You know, he'll go down the line and he can be an offensive outlet for us. If we're going to do what a lot of big teams do, we could just go to Croatia and buy a guy from Dinamo Zagreb. And Maro Perković here at left back has been doing all the things that every European class, world class Croatian player does at Dinamo Zagreb before making a big move into Germany or into the Premier League or whatever it might be. And, you know, again, a very stable kind of left back. He's played a little bit of centre back as well. So again, a guy that's shown to be a bit more capable, 50-50, you're shoulder to shoulder with people as well. You know, Dinamo Zagreb don't tend to sell their players for too cheap, so this one might cost a little bit more because he does have that kind of seal of approval, having come through like a proven academy as such. And Dinamo Zagreb are used to selling players into bigger leagues across European football for a lot of money, so it's not as if we'd be able to mug them off or anything like that. But as far as like could he displace Taylor, it's hard to imagine that from minute one. So I think like that type of player isn't something that we'd be looking at too much. But you never know with Celtic. We've seen, you know, over the llast couple of years, youth players, youth internationals, guys they can get somewhat cheap and effective that maybe they can, you know, brush up and make a better player to sell on. So that's why I featured Perković here, but I'm not too sure we would actually be hitting him. My number one shout I've had for left back, I think for the last year and a half for Celtic, is John Tolkin. Now, this guy is brilliant. He is a brilliant left back. And I think the confidence maybe all Celtic fans have had of the success of bringing Alistair Johnson from the MLS and bringing him into our squad should give everyone the confidence that this guy could just be a left-sided Alistair Johnson. A very different player, a wee bit similar to Prass in the sense that he can actually play defensive mid. He's played a bit of centre back as well, and he can get forward. I don't know if I would call him an attacking left back as such. The MLS, the football's a little bit different there. I think if he did play for us, it would be very much like an old school left back, you know, a guy that holds position, maybe makes a back three, allows Alistair Johnson to go forward a little bit more on the right hand side, that sort of thing. But this is a guy who's been waiting for a move to Europe for about 2 or 3 years, by the way, and it's not quite happened yet for one reason or another. Maybe one of the reasons is that, you know, he's not quite that get a complete package of a left back where he's like bombing up and down the line or whatever, but he could maybe actually mold into that role of the inverted fullback a little bit well, because he's got that bit of defensive mid experience under his belt. And again, transfers out of the MLS aren't terribly expensive, and we've had a lot of dealings with MLS, so I would be very surprised if we couldn't get an affordable deal for somebody like John Tolkin in. And Tolkin is a guy that, for me, like, could put Greg Taylor out the team, but he's a guy like Alistair Johnson. People would fall in love with him. The guy's a good player. He wears his heart on his sleeve and he gives everything on the pitch, and he's still my number one pick. Now, when it comes to centre-back, the question has to be the same as what we're thinking about just now with left-back. Can they definitely put Scales out the team in the best way possible? Can they be clearly better than Scales? We're ideally looking for someone that's played against the top teams in European football, maybe has some European experience himself. But again, when you look across Europe and you think about realistically how much money we might actually spend on a defender, there's not too many candidates that really tick every box and really jump out. But I do think if we were going to go out and push the boat out and get a money no option type player, I'd be going for the Japanese Rolls Royce, that is Koki Machida. Now, this is maybe a guy we could have picked up coming out of Japan, but he went for a little bit more money to USG, who is like the Brighton feeder team. This guy would cost a lot of money to get out of USG, because again, they're playing Champions League this year. He might even be lined up for Brighton. I don't think we're going to go for Koki Machida, but this is the sort of guy that if we're not buying like from the top table, if we're not going to get a Sepp Vandenberg out of Liverpool or whatever, that's a quality of prospect I would look to see us hopefully bring in, but I don't think that's someone that directly we would be going for. What is a lot more likely out of the same league, again, is another American actually, and it's a guy that I've thought Celtic should have maybe been keeping tabs on when he was leaving America in the first place, and that is Mark McKenzie. Now, he's in the last year of his contract, and he is a very, very good centre-back. Again, similar to the other guys I've mentioned in the video today, very capable in the duel, 50-50, can win balls in the air. But he is an MLS champion. He's done very well in Belgium as well, but he's maybe just not been like that top elite percentile for a lot of the key statistics, where lots of clubs around European football have came sniffing. But this is a guy that, for me, could put Scales out the team, would be an upgrade on him, but he doesn't have any deficiencies. It's not like, Scales is quite strong, 50-50, makes good effective clearances, but maybe his decision-making can be a wee bit sus. Maybe sometimes in turning and recovery runs, he can leave a little bit wanting, and maybe sometimes when he steps into midfield and he's walking into a low block or whatever you want to call it, he can get caught in two minds and make the wrong decision. Mark McKenzie doesn't really have any of that as a problem for me from what I've seen of him over the last couple of years. And I do think at 25 years of age, he's got a significant amount of experience under his belt. And being in the last year of his contract, it feels like somebody we could really rip out a gank in no problem at all. And again, if he didn't hit the ground running, he's great to have his third centre-back behind Scales and Vickers if he wasn't quite there. I do think he would put Scales out the team personally, but I think he's a guy that we could be looking at and we probably should go for. Because if it's just to be competitive at the Scottish level and not really thinking about too much about expanding the team or pushing the team on in any way, like the Rocky, Welsh, even Lager, BLK, UK, Murray, these guys, look, we'll get by. We'll be in the top two every season. I don't think we need to worry about that. The players we should be looking to buy, the club are always thinking about assets that can be sold on, but us as fans, we want to think about players that can lift the level of the team, and that's what I'm really trying to keep at the front of my mind. Now, when it comes into midfield, I do think we actually are pretty light in here. Lowell, Kwon, and Home, it's very reasonable to imagine none of them are meaningful for us this year, which means we've got Iwata, McGregor, O'Reilly, Rio, and Bernardo to count upon. Now, I expect Matt O'Reilly is going to leave. If Juventus and Atalanta are coming in for him, these are offers that Celtic won't reject, ultimately, as long as the price gets met, and the player isn't going to think twice about. Both of them are in the Champions League. Both of them will be competing at the top end of Serie A, which is one of the biggest leagues in European football. And, from there, he can really go on and have a great career, the career that we all believe he's capable of, really. So I am not holding my breath. I do not expect, as long as this interest is real, which it very much seems to be, I don't expect Matt O'Reilly to be hanging about too long. And that greatly, greatly, greatly diminishes the quality, the stature, and the depth of the midfield entirely. Because, all of our midfielders can play a multitude of positions, but O'Reilly has been really ever-present and flawless in all the different modes that he's played for us. Now, I will start the midfielder section off by saying a little footnote. We obviously have this lovely unspoken relationship with Man City or the CFG or whatever. You might have noticed, but Girona, another member of the CFG, they got into the Champions League this year, and UEFA have downright banned them. They cannot do any business together, but they can both play in the Champions League this year. So I think that really opens the door for maybe some high value prospects that would have been loaned out to Girona maybe coming to us. There's a couple of names we could throw about. Some of them are a bit more fanciful than others, like Echeverri, but, you know, maybe somebody like a James McAtee who played a good amount of Premier League football last year and was coming out of the Man City Academy with like a good reputation, you know, not quite the same as Palmer or Foden or anything like that, but along with Doyle, who went to Wolves, there's been a little clutch of those really modern, progressive, attacking-based midfield players come out of City over the last couple of years. And you know, this guy's still got a long contract to 2027. Played for Sheffield last year. Obviously, they got relegated. They didn't do too much. It was like backs against the wall moments for him quite a lot. But this is a guy that maybe, you know, if we got him in on loan, it just helps cover for the likes of, like, if Home isn't effective, Lawal doesn't kick on, Kwon doesn't get played, then we've got another guy we can use from the bench, quite, you know, pressure-free, to come in and keep the level of the squad high enough. But if we sold Matt O'Reilly, make no mistake about it, there is 2 transfers, maybe even 3, depending on the budget and the price that we could get this done for, that I would make to just instantly remodel and really upgrade our entire midfield. And the very first player I'd be going out and buying is maybe even the Japanese Matt O'Reilly and Ao Tanaka. Now, you might remember Ange Postecoglou's comments about trying to sign Mitoma for Celtic, but Brighton beat us to the punch kind of thing. And the team that Rio Hatate was in, Kawasaki Frontale, had an amazing little period of dominance right before Mitoma and Hatate and Ao Tanaka left. And Ao Tanaka was 2-time J-League Young Player of the Year. He was, along with Mitoma, but maybe depends on who you spoke to, maybe like right on par with Mitoma. But because he's centre midfield, maybe he was a bit more important to Kawasaki in their, you know, kind of dominant period that they had. Rio came to us, Mitoma goes to the Prem, and Ao Tanaka, he's fired his agents, I don't know how many times, but he ended up at Dusseldorf in the Bundesliga 2, and he's been there for the last couple of years. Now, Dusseldorf were so close to getting promoted into the Bundesliga this year, but again, he's changed agents. He didn't do international work. He is desperately trying to get out of Dusseldorf at this moment in time. His contract is in the final 12 months, and really, like, he would integrate very, very well into our squad. He used to play with Hatate. He knows Kyogo and Dyson from the national team. This guy gets in the national team all the time when we were saying, why has Hatate not been played, or Iwata or whatever, I don't know. This guy is proper top end. Now, he does look like a defensive midfielder who's all about interceptions and tackling and maybe doing a bit more of the Callum McGregor's, but he scores goals. He gets into the final third, he arrives late, he can bang from distance, and he's very good at set pieces, can set up assists and whatever as well. I don't think this would cost us more than 4 or 5 million euros or pounds. A great Celtic deal. And again, I don't think you need to worry about him integrating into the squad and all the rest of it. But as soon as I got Ao Tanaka over the line, the next thing I'd be doing is calling up Motherwell and saying, send us Lennon Miller now. We'll give you Odenholm on loan or something, but give us Lennon Miller. We want to get him into the Champions League. We want to get him into this squad. And he really could be the next Matt O'Reilly for us. But at 17 years of age, you don't want to put all of the pressure on him to do that right away, because it's a gamble for us. It might blow back in our face, number one. And number two, it's not great for the player. They could break down. They might hit a wall and need a bit of time out the team, etc. But I think Tanaka and Miller as a double kind of whammy signing, I think would do a great job of replacing Matt O'Reilly. And again, Matt O'Reilly, we're talking about him leaving for 25, 30 million euros, pounds, whatever it might be. And it really depends on the Celtic board's appetite to replace him or how much they see they can actually do. But, you know, the Celtic strategy normally is sell a player for a lot of money and then buy 2 or 3 of the same position for not too much. So if we can get Lennon Miller, let's just call it 3 million. Ao Tanaka, 4. You might be saying, Lennon Miller, 3 million, what? Just for argument's sake, 7 million euros. I would go out and spend another, according to Transfer Market, his value is 4.5 million euros. I would suspect it would cost maybe closer to 6 or 7. But I would go out and spend the, you know, however much it costs to go and get Santiago Rodríguez out in New York City. This guy is a bona fide attacking midfielder, loves set pieces, can run the channels, can play overlapping and underlapping runs with the wingers, can go over and beyond the striker. He is an attacking midfielder. He's an MLS champion as well. And again, similar to what I said with Tolkin, we should have a good degree of confidence that we can bring players from MLS and, you know, get them to hit the ground running. Granted, he's Uruguayan, not American, so there's maybe a little bit of a difference there culturally and whatever as well. But I think if you got Lennon Miller, Ao Tanaka and Santi Rodríguez in for under 14 million euros, pounds, whatever, that midfield feels a lot more capable to me. Now, could some of these players make the step up to the Champions League this season? Who knows? But on the profile and the performances I've seen from these guys, I think that would be swift moves and great business for Celtic that not only kind of fills the void of, you know, Matt O'Reilly, upgrades our squad by getting us an extra kind of attacking outlet, and we're kind of looking after the future with the Lennon Miller kind of type coming in here. But the big void is still up here in attack, because with no real designated first choice right winger really established, Dyson's obviously the man on the left, but we've got a bit of a supporting cast over there, and Kyogo, the lone striker at the club. Yeah, I know Dyson can play in there as well. Fine, right, whatever. Maybe Palma can be adapted, by the way. I've been forever saying that Palma's not a winger, so you never know. Maybe we see some adaptation from Palma this year. But we've already been linked to Michel Ange Balikwisha, and we spoke about that in the last video a little bit. If you missed it, I'll link it at the end of this one. It's the Paulo Bernardo video where we went into it in a bit more detail about what he offers and really how good of a player he could be for us. And I would make him the best, profile signing we've had since Kyogo or Dyson Maeda. So I really do hope that we push the envelope and we try and get this one over the line. But again, he's a wee bit more of the Kyogos. He's a wee bit more of the Dysons. He's a high energy guy, a bit more like Jota in the sense he can actually dribble and put a ball in a bit better. And with the Adamida transfer seemingly being off, we need a guy that can play second fiddle to Kyogo, is still top level, and gives us a lot of what Ida gave us in terms of that movement, that physicality, and a different route to go. And for this, I think I found some absolutely fantastic options. One of my favourites would be Sergio Camello. This is a very exciting Spanish youth international player who, coming from Atletico Madrid, has made the move to Rayo Vallecano. He plays quite a lot. He plays well enough. He's not been that prolific. The Spanish league is really tough, especially if you're not in a good team. But he still makes the Spain youth ranks. And what the main USP is about Sergio Camello is a lot of that build-up play, is a lot of that teamwork, He plays well, he presses well, he's press-resistant as well if he has to get the team, because Rayo Vallecano bank in really deep, defend really deep, so he's quite good at holding the ball out, allowing some of the players to go by him and for balls to get flicked on. Again, he's in the last year of his contract. He's not maybe got quite that Champions League experience, but former Atletico Madrid, a Spanish youth international, he really does tick all the boxes, and I do think if this is a deal we could get over the line, maybe for less than Adam Ida, it could be even more successful. Now, a player that caught my eye rather unexpectedly across European football last season is Inter Milan's Martín Satriano, who was on loan at Brest last year. Don't laugh, unless you're going to leave a like. And Satriano is an Adam Ida type guy. He's a really big centre forward, but he's actually so good with his feet. And Brest finished really high in Ligue 1 last year. I don't think there's any serious plans for him to be integrated into the Inter Milan team. And this is a guy that Inter would definitely loan out again, but we would obviously prefer to buy. But do you know what Celtic love to do? They love to loan with an option to buy. And I think this guy would be a great candidate for this. At 23 years of age, he's got that physicality to lead the line, but he's also got that technical ability to be able to drop into the pockets and have a bit of link-up play. Not a deal that I don't think would get done on the cheap, which is why the loan with option to buy would be a great prospect for Martín Satriano. But again, we do love to go back to the well. And what is the well? It's failed Premier League players or wannabe Premier League players. Leeds United obviously didn't get promoted back into the Premier League, and they have a very expensive squad. Now, if we had a lot of money, I would be talking about Jorginho Rutter, but I don't think we would have the money to get him out of Elland Road. So then my attention turns to Joe Piroe, who again, very similar to Adam Ida. Maybe not quite got the pace off the mark that Ida has, but very physically imposing, very good with his feet, can play number 10 as well as, arrowhead attacking, the main attacker, the centre forward in the team. Leeds paid 10 million for this guy off of Swansea, and I don't know if they would really sell him to us for anything less than that, but it is their second year out the Premier League. Those parachute payments are going. They still have a very expensive squad. They've sold Archie Gray. They might sell Somerville. I don't know if they'll get someone to buy Rutter off them, but they do need to get wages off their books. They do need to get transfer fees incoming. And for the amount of money that Norwich were quoting for Adam Ida, and now if maybe rug pulled us, they're not going to do a deal anymore, maybe this guy could be gotten for a similar enough deal. Maybe you need to pay a little bit more because he's maybe a little bit better. And if I can throw as a last one into this, a little left field option. Now, most of you guys might not know this guy, right? But 5 or 6 years ago, Bayern Munich spent a couple of million quid on an 18, 19-year-old that they thought could become a first-team striker for them in the next year or two, round about that whole what did they do after Lewandowski kind of, forward planning phase that they were in. They bought a lot of strikers and none of them really did work out. But Fiete Arp here is really kind of got back to being, and you might look at his averages here, over his last 5, 15 and 40 games. His ratings out of 100 are not very good. He's not played that many games over this period here. But his transfer value is under $1 million right now. And towards the back end of the year, for hosting Kiel, who were like mid-table Bundesliga 2, he was knocking in goals. He was getting assists and he was getting back into his best form. And this kind of fallen wonder kid kind of model or profile, we've went into that a few times and it's worked out kind of well enough. And you know, it's just one that it was a name that came on my list when I was doing all my searching and all my filtering and all the rest of it. And I thought, oh, that's a name I recognise. Maybe you guys will too. I don't know if it's a one that we would go in for. We have been linked to some Bundesliga 2 players over the last year. None of those things have materialised, of course, but Jan Fiete Arp could be probably gotten quite cheap. And if you wind the clock back 5 or 6 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. And all that seems to have happened is he's fallen out of favour with Bayern, had an injury or two. Nothing too serious, you know, and he's just kind of fell down the pecking order. He's looking for first team football. We got it last year, and he's looking to kind of move his career on. So just another name that came up I thought I would mention, but not one I think we would seriously consider. Out of everyone we've looked at in the video today, obviously I've made my feelings very, very clear on midfield, but I'll say it again. John Tolkin for left back, Alexander Prass for left back. Sign me up, no problem at all. Get Balikwisha in over the line, and then could you get a deal done for Sergio Camello or Martín Satriano? That would make me super happy. And I don't think we're asking for quite a lot. I don't think I'm being out of the realms of real here in terms of deals we could get over the line if we picked up the phone to these people. I hope you've been taking notes, Celtic, if you've been watching this one. I know you like to tune into the content here on the Celts Are Here. At any point in the video, if you did have a good time, you laughed, you learned, you liked something or whatever, I hope you did. Hit the subscribe button for more content like this on screen now. And some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy, including the last video where we're talking a bit more about Paulo Bernardo and Balikwisha. Get into the comment section and let me know if you could get one player from this video. Who would you bring in and why? Stay out of trouble, and I'll catch you on the next one.